the British Conservatives have accepted the obligation to discover ways to be culturally modern, to reflect their society as it is, and have had great success with certain types of immigrant groups, those who are more likely to be self-employed, those who are more likely to be professionally educated. So I think we have to come here to learn, not the other way around.
Well, that's David Frum talking about his piece published earlier this month in The Atlantic titled "What Republicans Can Learn from British Conservatives." Republicans have won the popular vote in the presidential election just once in the last 28 years. If they need a playbook to turn around their fortunes in national elections, they may want to look at the success Conservative candidates have had in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. What's the winning formula for politicians like Britain's David Cameron and Tony Abbott down under? Former Illinois Congressman Michael Patrick Flanagan and John Browne, a former member of Parliament in the UK, joined us to discuss the issue. Welcome to you both. John, I want to start with you. Is there something for the GOP to learn here?
Yes, I think there is, and that is that politics evolves. And if you just take two instances, for example, the Conservative Party in England has accepted the gay movement. And even more important than that is it accepted that in today's world, along with old age pensions and Social Security, national medical services are available to the public. And I think those are two great moves because if you look at the United States, which until recently had massive costs because of hidden subsidies to insurance companies, and still tens of millions of people completely uncovered. And so I think those two things are illustrative of evolving politics in Britain to reflect real grassroots feelings.
All right, we'll dive into the health care in just a little bit. Congressman Flanagan, I think what he's talking about really is center-right politicians. Are they electable in today's Republican Party?
Yes, I think center-right politicians are the future of the party. I think your guest is right in that you have to evolve to some extent to stay current, because current moves. But you don't have to cross over. And I don't think that national health care here, I think it's a bridge too far right now. And I think that accepting the gay movement is wise, and that's generally happening on the right. So I'll agree and disagree with you. But I will also observe that in England, the late elections, I think, were more of a product of a realignment among the left players, and Ed Red Miliband being just a little bit too unpalatable because the Tories did not have that big an increase in the vote. They just had a bigger percentage based on a lot of the left staying home.
But Michael, if I may say, the thing is when you say about national health, in America have Obamacare, which I think is terrible. But the Republicans come along and say we're going to reform Obamacare, but they put nothing up in its place. And that is the big dilemma. And I think the Conservatives just give them some lead as to what should be happening in the future.
Well, John,
there are three... Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead, Congressman Flanagan.
Yeah, I think there are three Republican plans that are out there. There's not nothing. What there isn't is a replacement for national health care with another form of national health care. And if that's what you're saying, then yes, that is true. But there is several plans out there to make sure that the transferability of insurance across state lines, that the acceptance of pre-existing conditions and other very popular forms included here will continue on.
And John, from the Frum article, for me at least, it spoke more to the religious issue as opposed to the healthcare issue, the reproductive choices, the gay marriage debate. Would you agree that it's more about the social issues, and that's the reason why these conservatives are having more luck overseas?
Yes, I think there is a move. I mean, I happen to be one of the supporters of the Blessed Margaret, and I think she also, believe it or not, was would have gone along the same line of reflecting grassroots opinion. In our day, of course, the opinion was against the abuse of power by trades unions and things like that. But I think she would have moved along the same sort of lines as David Cameron. And to be fair to David Cameron, UKIP cost him, which I support, 22 seats at the last election, which forced the coalition. And so he's had to do all these things, reducing taxes, reducing regulations and things, with the coalition of some really weak, principle-less, left-wing, pro-European liberals. And so he's done a pretty good job. He's the first Prime Minister that I haven't met since Winston Churchill. And so I'm doing this just on his record, and I think he's, in those circumstances, has done a pretty good job of evolving with the British people. And as Michael quite correctly said, he didn't increase the vote much, but then UKIP took 13% of that vote, which are basically Thatcherite Conservatives.
Congressman Flanagan, have the Republicans just really failed to deliver on some of these key issues? And in some sense, should they maybe go along more with the gay marriage debate and the marijuana debate in order to get their economic agenda passed through Congress and to possibly win the White House?
I don't know about the marijuana debate. I think that one, much like health care, is still in the wind as to whether that really is a centrist issue. But the gay debate certainly, I think, is settled in most corners as a centrist issue, and the Republicans need to embrace it fully. And they're doing it at arm's length now, but I think by the time the election comes, they'll have their arms around it. And the large number of gay Republicans in this country can, more or less come out and say, we're here, and the crazy left doesn't speak for us. And I think that'll be a very healthy episode for the party. I don't know that every social issue that the left proposes is something the right has to embrace to make itself electable. You have to stay true to your values. But those values, as has observed here, do change and evolve, and you have to stay with them.
I totally agree with Michael on that. One area which is sort of religious is the acceptance of Islam in Britain. And I think David Cameron has been very clever in dividing Islam from extremist Islamic behavior. He's been very strong, far, far stronger than President Obama on this, and yet he's managed to keep Islamic people sort of on side. And that's a very tricky road, and I think he's done a good job on that.
Well, Congressman Flanagan, is it safe to say, though, that like a center-right Republican in the primary would have a difficult time as these voters are basically more on the conservative side?
I think Republicans are through killing ourselves over trying to get the perfect, and we're willing to elect the electable. And I think we're waiting for a guy who has enough charisma to beat a Democrat, and I think we'll coalesce around him. And it won't be the guy with the most money necessarily, and it won't be the guy who's ideologically pure. Those will be good helpers to a nominee, but our nominee, I believe, will be an electable one.
I very much agree with that.
John, is there one of the candidates you think that is running, there's 16, 18 that may declare in the next couple of months, that you think captures what David Cameron's doing, what Tony Abbott's doing, that really captures the essence of that kind of political mind?
Well, I think the gentleman you just showed in the photograph was, to my mind, captures really what Michael was saying. And I think he'd be a very, very strong candidate, as you say, not with basically no money, but a fantastic ideal and able to capture the minds of various segments of the Republican Party, including the black section, which I think is longing for someone like that, a black leader.
And Congressman Flanagan, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this is something that some of these Republican candidates will look to Great Britain, look to Australia, and possibly implement some of these ideas into the debate?
I hope they do. I sincerely hope they do, because a center-right candidate is more electable than a right-right candidate. And a center-right president could put some of the right guys into the cabinet, into the government, and work on some of the issues that are important to them, but it doesn't have to be that guy who is at the top of the ticket. I think a center-right government is more healthy for the nation, it's better for the institutions, it will invite Democrats into the process, which is healthy for all of us. And I think that a center-right candidate has a much better chance, and I pray we nominate one.
Just as Margaret brought Labour people into her party, and I think President Reagan the Great certainly learned a lot of lessons from the Blessed Margaret.
We're going to leave it right there. Of course, the Republican Party, there's plenty of room. It's a big tent. We're going to discuss this much more. Coming up, David Letterman, his last show last night.